We, as in all of us, have to understand and appreciate that we have all just gone through a really traumatic time. This COVID thing, this lockdown thing, this mask thing, a lot of people have been very, very upset. A lot of people allow themselves to get overly upset and frustrated over situations that they have no control over, which added to their frustration. Unfortunately, here we are 2 years out, and people are on auto, and they're still lashing out in frustration, anger, and so on. And we need to understand, especially to try to maintain a safe working environment, we got to understand that this person probably is just needs to vent. They're going through a lot. I'm not trying to make an excuse for their behavior. I'm just saying that if we make an effort to try to understand where they're coming from, it will help temper our reaction or response.
Hi, and welcome to the 91 Day Success Podcast, where we interview successful business people, learn about their stories, and ask them some fun questions along the way that hopefully can help all of us learn how to be more successful in our businesses along the way. With that, I'm really thrilled today to have John Riley from General Response with me. John and I met just about maybe 2 months ago for the first time.
Yeah.
Um, and while we've never met in person, we had a great conversation. And I said, "Hey, John,
Mhm.
I really want to get you on the podcast. You can share some things about your business and what you've done." With that, John, to get us started, to introduce yourself to the rest of us that are here and the rest that are listening, can you give us kind of an elevator pitch of who you are and a little bit about your business?
Yeah, good to see you. And thank you for the opportunity to chat. Very basically, in a nutshell, Gentle Response is a consulting company specializing in very dynamic, realistic conflict de-escalation training seminars through the use of some very realistic scenarios. I have a team of instructor role players, all former first responders or law enforcement with decades of experience and a heart and passion for teaching. And that's what we do. We go around the country putting on these seminars for churches, and business corporations, state agencies, law enforcement. It's gotten busy lately.
I can only imagine. I can imagine. I know I was
Yeah.
just speaking the other day with actually an associate of mine at lunch, and his wife works as a nurse in the hospital. And he was sharing with me that even in hospitals now, I don't know if it's a post COVID thing or what, but literally he said there's so many just mad people, he's for lack of a better description. They've had to train the doctors and nurses and the staff how to de-escalate because people are on edge, for lack of a better description. Can you tell us a little bit about it? One, does that fit in with some of the training you do, John? And I guess particularly on the church model to get started, because I found that interesting, but also on the business. Talk to us a little bit about why is it important that they learn this de-escalation training?
We, as in all of us, have to understand and appreciate that we have all just gone through a really traumatic time. This COVID thing, this lockdown thing, this mask thing, a lot of people have been very, very upset. A lot of people allow themselves to get overly upset and frustrated over situations that they have no control over, which added to their frustration. Unfortunately, here we are 2 years out, and people are on auto, and they're still lashing out in frustration, anger, and so on. And we need to understand, especially to try to maintain a safe working environment, we got to understand that this person probably is just needs to vent. They're going through a lot. I'm not trying to make an excuse for their behavior. I'm just saying that if we make an effort to try to understand where they're coming from, it will help temper our reaction or response, because our automatic, ingrained in our DNA reaction response to someone who gets loud, rude, obnoxious with us is to react defensively, maybe even raise our voice back at them and all that. But in a situation like that, that's only going to spiral the situation out of control, because a lot of these people, the vast majority of them, I would dare say, they just want to be validated, affirmed, treated with dignity and respect. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to treat someone with respect when you're yelling at them. So we've got to be able to just give them that opportunity to just vent. And here's the other thing, when they're at a particular emotional spike, they're not listening to you anyway. So you trying to get
Oh,
loud and all
yeah.
that, you're not gonna get to them. So give them that time, that opportunity to burn off some of that energy before you start trying to engage with them. Because the moment you feel like you have to make your point, you're going to start raising your voice. You're going to start talking over them. And that's just going to make this situation blow up and go off the rails.
Really good advice. And I think something that can benefit everybody across the board, whether they're in a nonprofit situation or whether they're in a business, commercial, corporate situation.
Mhm.
Uh, People want to be heard pre,
That's
post
right.
COVID, regardless. But especially now with people being a bit more on edge, I think that's super, super
Yeah.
important. So I know one of the questions that I'm going
Yep.
to get asked very shortly, if not already, is your background. John, why did you get into this industry? And can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a business owner in the security industry?
I will simply say it's a God moment, but to flesh it out, I got my pilot's license back in the 80s when I was in high school. All I ever wanted to do was fly. Life happened, joined the Army, 7 years as an infantry grunt, went through Desert Storm. For some reason, didn't do anything aviation related. Became a police officer here in Grand Rapids in 1996, road patrol the whole time, retired in 2015. And again, a career in law enforcement, nothing aviation related. As my career was winding down, I said to myself, you know what, doggone it, all I ever wanted to do was fly. And so I saw myself going into another career, just flying businessmen around and started working towards that goal. And in 2016, about a year after I retired, representative from our church security, I attend one of the major churches here in West Michigan, made a comment to me, asked me if I would consider doing a de-escalation class for our security team. We have a pretty large security team. And it was while putting together that class, that I absolutely was hit with what I would describe as this road to Damascus experience, because as laser focused as I was with an objective, a mission plan to go on to another career field as a charter pilot, I just knew that I knew that I knew. And I felt so led, moved, and pulled to drop everything and go in this direction and create a training program beginning with churches, because that's where I'd seen a lot of good people meaning well end up saying and doing things that could escalate situations. And so I just stepped out in faith. I have a lot of college, but no college degree. I have no idea anything like that, but I knew that I had to do this. And so I put together, got some business cards made up, and here I am 8 years later with the team, and we travel around the country working with churches. And by word of mouth alone, and just having a social media presence, people reach out to me from all over. Um, we've been to New York, we've been to Florida, Pennsylvania, Indiana. A lot of inquiries west of the Mississippi River, but due to travel expenses and all that, no one's pulled the trigger yet. But I know it's only a matter of time. Right? Uh, um, and I tried to, I had to come up with a business name, and I felt led to go to Proverbs 15:1. And I went there, and some of the for a couple translations that I read, they say, "A soft tone turns away wrath." And I looked at several translations, and I'm like, "Lord, I'm just not seeing my business name here." And then but I kept being led there. And then I found the Message translation of Proverbs 15:1, and it says, "A gentle response diffuses anger." And I knew that was my business name because I have seen that, folks. A gentle response diffuses anger. Does it make it easy? Does it make you does it help you de-escalate a situation just like that? No, absolutely not. But more likely than not, you will be effective and successful in de-escalating a situation if you have a gentle response in that moment. And so here we are.
Well, John, I know you specialize in security training and that, but as we
Yeah.
talked the other day, and as I listened to you again today, one of the things that makes me think about is customer service, even from a corporate perspective. You know, it's got to be an unpleasant position. We've all taken calls from clients that were not happy. And it seems to me the same things that you're teaching from a
Yep.
security really would apply there as well, because these are really communication techniques that help de-escalate a situation. And whether that's a customer who's mad because his French fries came out cold, or whether that's, you know, in a situation, a true security situation, de-escalation is really what you want to do at that point.
De-escalation skills is a life skill. And I emphasize this because even though I started out with church security and so on, it is absolutely evolved and is absolutely applicable to anyone and anything on this planet. If you're a human being on this planet, you can benefit from this training because you can apply this not just at church or at work, but to your coworkers, family, a potential road rage situation developing on you or around you. These are basic life skills. Um, I was having a conversation with some police officers a number of years ago, and we were talking about the caliber of young people coming up and wanting to be police officers, good people, but not knowing what they don't know, and their life has been it's all emojis and emoticons, and they haven't really developed people skills. And all of a sudden, you throw them in a situation where there's a very dynamic, loud domestic argument going on, and unfortunately, these young officers are the ones saying and doing things that could escalate it. But at the same time, I have seen McDonald's managers and other, everywhere. YouTube is full of examples of people of all walks of life handling a stressful, confrontational situation as best they can. But unfortunately, at a certain point, their own stress level in the moment causes them to become offended or frustrated or impatient. And if you allow yourself to feel any one of those emotions, you are more likely than not to end up saying or doing something that escalates it. And YouTube is full of examples of good people meaning well, but end up doing something like pointing a finger in frustration or whatever, or raising their voice or squaring off on someone, and it just blows up. I have a video of situations from fast food. In the old days, a manager or clerk would simply say, it would take 3 seconds to do this. You know what? I'm sorry. Here's an extra order of fries. Even here's your money back. Bam, situation's over. But now you see these situations, and we just had one here at a with a Wendy's here in Wyoming in September of 2022, where the clerks start mouthing off and just going crazy and just escalating the situation until it became physically violent. Totally avoidable. And like I said, so anyway, like I said, the de-escalation skills that I teach are life skills that are applicable across the board on this planet.
It's so interesting to see these just human conditions that we can
Mhm.
deal with and talk to. Let's go back to the business for a moment. Talk to me a little
Yeah.
bit. You said you got started about 8 years ago, and obviously you got started with churches, but now I know you do business literally with companies across the various parts of the United States. How did you, you know, a lot of our viewers are business owners. Share
Yeah.
with them a little bit about how did you expand and how did you start getting those clients that obviously didn't necessarily know you personally?
Word of mouth. Because these church volunteers would go back to their businesses and they told two people and they told two people. And then they would check out my webpage and social media presence and on my YouTube and on social media. I'll take these, especially in 2020, I got into the habit of grabbing these situations that I see in the news and I'll talk about how de-escalation skills, knowledge, and techniques would have changed the outcome most likely. And so I've started throwing that out there. And so that's how it just took off from there. Yeah, it just word of mouth and thank you, Lord. I've really not made much effort to market myself other than doing what I can doing the best I can to do a good thing at these training seminars, and then just having a social media presence. So
That's just from your perspective, John. Do you find most of your customers have a security situation first and then go, oh my goodness, we need to train, or that they are realizing that the likelihood of one of those is greater than it used to be. And it's really important that we train our team. Any idea which is the majority?
You know what? Lately, over the last year, 2 years, I think it's equal. They're realizing people are realizing it's not just a security thing or customer service per se. It's just human interaction. So, a lot of customers, clients are reaching out to me. Um, Actually, lately, it's probably been more customer relations, customer services. Try
Okay.
and the big thing that my team and I try to do is try to number 2 things with in regards to the scenarios. I wanna validate and affirm what people are already doing right. Because trust me, there are people that are doing things right, they just don't know it, because no
Mhm.
one ever came up to you and said, "Jonathan, hey, you know what? The next time you are in this situation, do exactly that." It may or may not have worked out right now, but I'm telling you, in the long run, you keep doing that, that's gonna work. So we wanna validate and affirm people what they're doing, and then talk about, some of the things that they may have done in that scenario under stress that they wanna be aware of. Like, for example, rolling your eyes, be careful. Some people have a tendency to wear their emotions and thoughts on their face. Yeah, and you wanna be careful about that because you could set a situation off that much worse. Again, people wanna be treated with dignity and respect. Them seeing you roll your eyes is not making them feel like they're being treated with dignity and respect. So, little things like that. So yeah, beginning with security, but lately, I think more people are reaching out to me. Yeah, you're right. With for customer service issues, customer relations, and to give their people a boost of confidence that they are doing it right. It just doesn't always work out, and that's something else I try to emphasize to people. It's not always going to work. You are going to have people who just want to be hard headed and argumentative and fight and stuff like that. But I try to, encourage them and let people know, "Hey, if you're doing something right, 9 times out of 10, or at least in the long run, you're more likely, to be successful and effective in de-escalating a situation, but you gotta give it time. You can't get impatient."
Oh, great advice. Great advice. Talk to us a little bit, John, not knowing the security industry, and those that I do know are more focused on, whether that be security protocols and, do we arm or not arm our security personnel, and what type of I don't want to say weaponry, but I can't think of another word. Do we have to mitigate a threat? Yours is much more psychological and communication based. How do you stay
Mm.
ahead of the competition and continuously innovate in the security industry when I'm assuming a lot of your brethren are more focused on the latest and greatest technology and toys, for lack of a better description again? How do you stay up ahead of them focused on the communication side?
I gotta be honest with you. I discovered that not too many people continuously emphasize the basics. Everyone's worried about the latest bells and whistles, and they lose track of the basics. It doesn't matter how many tools you have on your belt, or how many diplomas you have, or how many schools and seminars you sat through. If you don't know that you have a tendency to roll your eyes or square off on someone, all that knowledge is worthless because you are saying and doing things that could escalate a situation. So I have found that for me, my training seminars, 4.5 hours, 5 hours long, is emphasizing to people over and over again these basics. It- and if you hear something over and over again, it starts to sink in. I mean, you and I, we both still remember, have a Coke and a smile. We heard some of these
Hmm.
jingles so many times. Have it your way at Burger King. I mean, we could probably still recite a whole lot of stuff that we heard back in the '80s and even in the '90s because we heard it so many times. And so I tell people at my training seminars, there's a real good chance I am going to teach you or to tell you something I don't think I'm going to teach you anything you have not heard before. You're just going to hear it from me. I am going to present it differently. I'm going to tell you life stories and life experience to highlight certain teaching points and so on. Okay. Because one of the biggest things that everyone learns as they go through conflict de-escalation classes and training, and there's some good people out there, I boiled it down to the basics. to what I call your ACE, your ACE card: appearance, communication, engagement. Any class you go to, and even when I went through training and became a certified crisis intervention specialist, that weekend-long class validated and affirmed everything that I'm already teaching, and I could boil it down to just those 3 basic concepts. Your appearance: do you look condescending, dismissive? Do you look aggressive? Do you look confrontational yourself because you're getting defensive at someone else's behavior? Communication: the words you use, your tone of voice. How many times have we just got a little bit more uptight just because of the tone of voice someone was using with us, even if they were on the phone? Is tone of voice. Engagement: are you making eye contact? Active reflective listening. All these concepts and basic things are taught at conflict de-escalation courses around the country, but no one teaches it the way I do, talking about ACE. And so I try to simplify it. And so that's how I think I am getting as much notice as I am, not only because of the scenarios, but because I'm trying to keep it very basic and to the point. Because in that moment of a stressful confrontational situation, you are not going to be going through your head the last graphs and
Yeah.
statistics you saw. You want to know, what can you say right now in the moment to begin the de-escalation process?
This makes so much sense, and I think, I can see why that message is appealing to potential
Mhm,
customers. It reminds me so much of the high school coach or the college coach or even the pro coach that took over a new team that was struggling and went back to the basics. Let's
mhm.
not focus on remembering every unique and wild and crazy play, but let's go focus back on blocking and tackling, making sure that we've got that down right. Because if we do those basics right, and we do them better than our competition, chances are we're going to win in most of those situations that come up. So, yeah, makes
You know,
incredible sense. Makes
I
incredible
used
sense.
I used to be a photographer. Oh, I'm still a photographer, but I used to do weddings and things like that. And I would run into some people and they would brag about their 35 megapixel camera. And that seemed to be the big marketing thing. And I would tell people, look, take a breath and slow down, because you may have a 35 megapixel camera, but if you don't know how to focus, or you don't know anything about lighting and all that, you just have a 35 megapixel piece of trash. And so get down to basics: lighting, so in that regard. So in the same way with conflict de-escalation and people skills and communication, just don't lose sight of those basics. And I think that my team and I really do a phenomenal job of really emphasizing those points and making the class interesting and engaging. Because Lord knows, and I'm sure you've been through you go through a day-long class and you walk out of there thinking, man, we could have covered this before lunch. Or
Oh yeah.
or you spend right, and or you spend 2 days and you walk out and you're like, "Man, we could have covered this on the first day." I've been there, and I don't wanna be that guy, and so we pack a lot into 5 hours, sometimes more, depending on what the client needs, and I keep them moving, I keep them engaged, and again, I use a lot of personal experiences and stories and observations to keep it interesting and to highlight this stuff. 'Cause like you and me talking and all that, it's one thing, for us to be talking and I'm sitting here spouting about what the latest graph says or what the latest textbook says, but if I tell you what I experienced, what I observed, that makes this podcast interesting.
Absolutely. 110%. So no, totally
Mhm.
agree. Well, one of the questions I love to ask John, and it fits with the name of our podcast, the 91 Day Podcast. And this is one that I don't know that I prepped you for. So if you're not sure and you need a minute to think, that's fine. But if because we're headed into what most people would agree some recessionary times, I think there's going to be a lot more people looking to start a side hustle, maybe pursue that entrepreneurial bent that they've had, like you and I have both done, and start a business in that. If you had to start over, you had no choice, and somebody gave you $1,000 and a laptop and a phone, you didn't have to worry about food and shelter. You didn't have to worry about a vehicle. But you had $1,000, a phone, and a laptop. What would you do to build a business in the first 91 days? That's 3 months. In the first 3 months, what would you do to build a business in those first 91 days?
You did kind of comment that you would be asking me that question, and I've contemplated that. But I always came back to this. For me personally, I stepped out in faith because I don't know what I don't know. And if you gave me a laptop and a pen and $1,000, I would probably just stare at it because I don't know business back. You know what I'm saying? I just
Sure.
knew that I had to do. And so, really, in those 91 days, I probably would not do anything much different than what I did do. Was just start making a phone call and saying, "Hey, my name's John. This is what I do." And just slowly, I think if anything, I would encourage people out there, look, if you have a heart and a dream and a desire to do something, the big one right there, and I think we've all heard this before, but it's different when you're actually hearing it. Ignore the haters, ignore
Yeah.
the doubters, ignore the haters, even when they're in your own family. Because like I said, me starting this business was so out of character for the people who knew me and grew up around me. They were supportive, but I knew there was some concern because John doesn't know business. Um, but in those early days, when I heard there were doubters and naysayers and stuff like that from people I used to work with, or this negative comments on social media, you've got to look past that. You got to let it go, and just continue to hang on to that dream. So really, if you gave me all those things, $1,000 and a phone and a laptop, I don't know that I would do anything different, Jonathan. It's because I don't know what I don't know, other than to do what I did before and just step out in faith. And really the word of encouragement I would tell people is just stay focused, ignore the haters. Trust me, you will develop your tribe, your supporters and all that will fall in place, and give yourself positive affirmations and just let yourself know that you can do it, you're qualified, and so on. So that's really, I think, that's the best way I can answer that question there.
Well, I think it's a great one, and I think it really fits in with what you're doing for your business, John. I mean, your
Yeah.
business is focused on the fundamentals of de-escalation,
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
on doing all the neat, fancy stuff. And what you're talking
Mhm.
about here is really the same thing. And I think it's so true. If you're going to be starting a business, focus on the basics.
Mhm.
Don't worry about, you and I are both avid, I'll speak for myself, an avid amateur photographer. You've done more pro work
Mhm.
than I have. But, I've realized that this particular device
Mhm.
allows me to take photos and video. Is it as nice as my 35 millimeter mirrorless camera that I love to use? No, it's not. But at the end of the
Mhm.
day, when it comes to
Mhm.
my business and creating a video, of answering a question for one of my customers, I can do it in 30 seconds on this phone, and it will be 95% of everything it would be if I took the 3 hours to set up and do it
Right.
on my DSLR and edit it and everything else. And sticking to the basics in that case is one of many examples, allows me to be successful. And I love what you said. It's the same way I built our company. We identified an audience, and we picked up the phone and we called them and introduced ourselves and basically said, "Hey, this is what we do and how we can make your life better. Do you have any need to make your life better in this way?" And they either say,
Mhm.
"Yes, I do," or a lot of them say, "No, I don't."
Yep.
But
Yep.
you don't need a lot of them to say yes if you're building a good business, because a few key people that then, as you do, then that you can leverage for word of mouth and referrals, can allow you to build, as you've done, an amazingly successful business that serves far more people than what you originally thought you would. I think the other thing I would add that you didn't add, but I would like to say about you from what I've learned about you, you also have the heart of a servant. You're trying to serve the people that you work with. And I think that's a key part of being successful in business, is being focused on the value that you're bringing to your customer, not just the money that your customer is going to be giving to you. Because when you focus on that value, you're going to be successful. It reminds me, you're probably not old enough, John, but when I got started in sales, I listened to Zig Ziglar a lot. And one of his
Yeah.
common things was, if you help enough other people get what they want, you can have anything you want. And it's so true, I think, in business today, and something I would recommend for anybody considering starting up. Help people get what they want. And in that process, assuming they're willing to trade some money for getting them there, you're going to become successful, and probably more successful than any other way that you could have done it. So,
It reminds me, there is a biblical verse, and of course I didn't go to preacher school and I can't remember which verse it is, but it does say something along the lines of put others ahead of yourself. Don't do things with vain conceit, thinking of yourself, but
hmm hmm
put others above you, and exactly right. Having that servant leadership attitude and that heart of a servant, I think is very important. I've had people make comments to me, um, about how much money I could potentially make and stuff like that. And I gotta be honest with you, and I'm not just saying this, that is really not my goal.
hmm
I really, they'll ask me to do a webinar or something like that, and I can't, because it's not the same. The quality of the training and stuff like that, even though informational, is not the same as what I can do, when we do things in person. I'm more interested in being able to make sure that you and your customers, your clients, your personnel, your staff, your volunteers are going to go home safe. If you and your people can go home safe, that's a win. There's a huge misconception these days on what de-escalation even is or what it looks like. There's no such thing as a single word or phrase that you can say, or a single thing that you can do that would just
mm
de-escalate a situation. It takes time for that person to come down from whatever emotional spike that they're at. You got to give it time. And even if they walk out the door mad, kick the trash can over, you went home safe. That's a win. Hopefully they go away, they calm down, come back, apologize. And a lot of times they'll come back and apologize for their behavior. Hey, you know what? I'm really sorry. I was really upset. Kids did something in school and I was just kind of taking that on you. I'm sorry. Again,
yeah.
recognize that the people that you deal with, they're probably dealing with something. And this is something I emphasize in all my classes, especially with my church clients. But there's not a single thing any of these people who are upset, loud, rude, obnoxious, there's not a single thing they're going through that you haven't in some way. You may have a better support system. You may have better stress management. You may have a better relationship with God. But the point is, you've been where they're at. You've had issues with bills and family and coworkers and COVID and mask, blah, blah, blah. You've been there. So give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they are being loud, rude, and obnoxious, but doggone it, you can't tell me, Jonathan, that you have not in your lifetime been talking to someone and just wanted to smack the lips off their face. We've all been there. We've all been
Absolutely.
there, right? And so give this person the benefit of the doubt. They're just going through something, and they just need someone to listen to. And if you have ever said to yourself, Lord, here I am, send me, well, bam, there you are. Just listen to this individual for a little bit. That's all you need to do. And chances are good it will work out, and you'll be very successful and effective in de-escalating that situation.
Well, John, I want to thank you for your time today, and what you shared. I think it's a very valuable message for
Thank
everyone,
you.
business leader or not, that's listening. Um, Obviously, we're going to display your website information and your contact information so anyone's interested can reach out to you. But just as we wrap up here, what would you recommend if somebody says, wow, this general response stuff, this really resonates with me, and I think it would benefit my church, my business, whatever. What should they do to learn more about how you can help them?
I point people to my YouTube page, because there they will see a whole number of little videos I've made from different training seminars and all that. That will give them a real good idea of what a training seminar looks like and sounds like. They'll get a feel for how I present. They'll get a feel for what their personnel and their staff will go through and get out of it. But then again, I have a social media presence. So whatever your favorite platform is, you can find me. I'm throwing little blurbs here and there. There's going to be something for everyone. And then again, you can always call or email me directly, John at gentle-response.com, and more than happy to kind of go over things with you and so on.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, again, I so appreciate your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. And
Thank
I
you.
look forward to one of these days, since we actually both live in the same town,
Yeah,
having a chance to catch up over lunch or coffee. So,
absolutely, absolutely.
all right. Make it a great day, John. Thank you.
You too. Be blessed. Thank you.